So when you have an image in place of an image, then you're taking the image that's in your mind, the thing that's in your, coming from your pineal, coming from your higher self, coming from that place, and you're bringing about so that you feel it in all of your body. You feel it, like you feel it in your bones, you feel it in your skin. You know exactly what it is that you want and the path that you want to take and what you want to be doing with your hands, and you like it's absolutely real. And then that any wage I had asked of life would have willingly paid. And I didn't have this information when I was in my 20s, that I could have said, hey, I'd like to always have $300K in the bank, and I'd like to make $20K a month or $100K a month. Like, I had no idea that those kinds of numbers were even possible. That was outside of my realm of possibilities at the time. Hi, welcome to Finding Fuscata. I'm Shawn. Let's get into it. This is fundamentals number 4. I'm talking about mental imagery and visualization. And I love this quote right here. It's visualization is daydreaming with a purpose. And yeah, that's a very apt quote. So, and isn't that cool? I love this graphics over there. Over there. I love the graphics. Anyway, it's AI. The things that you can do with AI these days are just borderline creepy, but beautiful just the same. Anyway, here we go. All right, here's what we're going to talk about today. The first thing is deciding and figuring out what it is, what do you want from life. It's very important to know that. Then we'll talk about the importance of visualization, vision boards and journals. I have some unconventional views on those. I've had mixed results with that kind of thing, but we'll talk about it just the same. And the role of emotion and visualization, that's where we're going to get a little bit deep. You're probably going to want to go to that section and rewind it and re-listen to it a couple times, because it's going to get a little bit deep in there. And then maybe the most important thing is the power of forgetting, which sounds weird, but once we get there, you'll see what it is I'm talking about. Okay? All right. Whenever I'm thinking about visualization, this poem always comes to mind for me, and I'll just read it to you out loud real quick. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted up my score. Life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked from menials higher, only to learn, dismayed, that any wage I had asked of life would have willingly paid. And here's my personal experience with this, is when I was a young man, early 20s or so. This was like the early 2000s, the dot-com bubble was going on. And I was an airman in the Air Force, and I was working with these folks who were obsessed with how much money they were going to be making, and everything was about, they wanted to make $150K a year, $160K a year, and that was how they thought of the world. They were contractors, and they were thinking about becoming civil service employees. And to my mind, that was how life was going to go. I had an idea that I was going to go through my Air Force career. I was going to make certain ranks. I was going to achieve certain accolades and medals and do those sorts of things. And then when that was done, I would go become a civil servant and, work towards a certain income level. And that's what I did. I executed that plan, and everything worked out exactly as I thought it would, except for the things that didn't. But that's a different story. But that's what I got, because that's what I asked for. And it's like it says here in this poem, that any wage I had asked of life would have willingly paid. And I didn't have this information when I was in my 20s, that I could have said, hey, I'd like to always have $300K in the bank, and I'd like to make $20K a month or $100K a month. Like, I had no idea that those kinds of numbers were even possible. That was outside of my realm of possibilities at the time. And so all I ever asked for in that time was to make Master Sergeant in the Air Force, to get a good civil service job, and to make my current pay scale. And that was what I wanted. And then I went and I did it, and life gave me what it was that I asked for. Even some of the things that I didn't know I was asking for, but that's a different story. We'll talk about that later. But it's very, very important to know what it is that you want from life. And then also, we'll talk about later, to be sure that you are asking for what it is that you want. And then also being able to trust that it's possible that the things that you want may not be the best things for you, and life may have something better planned for you. But we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. So let's talk about the importance of visualization. Okay. So, Earl Nightingale has that book called The Strangest Secret. And in it, he talks about if you have a ship that doesn't have, it has a captain and a crew, but it doesn't have a destination and a map, then it's not going to get there. And it doesn't matter, how talented the people are or how seaworthy the ship is. If it doesn't have a purpose, doesn't have a direction. If you remember when I talked about the 8th Hermetic principle, the principle of care, of having that what he calls the definite chief aim, or what Neville Goddard calls the idea of the wish fulfilled, coming at it from the idea of the wish fulfilled, then that, in this analogy with the ship and the crew, is the captain having a vision of where it is that they're going to go. As they're sailing, they don't know what storms are going to come up, maybe have a pretty good idea of it, and you don't know everything, all the challenges that the crew is going to face and that the ship is going to face. You don't have all those nuanced, what does Jordan Peterson call them, like the high resolution details. You don't have those high resolution details of what's going to happen, but you can have a very low resolution picture of where it is that you want to go and the general path that you want to take to get there, right? So, but if you don't have any of that, if you don't even have a kernel of an idea, if you don't even have a low resolution idea where it is that you want to go, you're not going to get there. And one of the things that I advocate, that I've used in my life, and I've encouraged a lot of other people to do this, is Jordan Peterson's program called Life Self-Authoring. And I'll put a link to the description in that. But what that does is you look at your past and you think about where you've been in your past, where you came from, your childhood, your younger years, your ambitions, your foibles, your flaws, all that kind of stuff. So you have a really good picture of what has been, and then you take a very honest assessment of where you are now, and then you write a very honest assessment of where it is that you want to go. Because if you don't know where you've been, it's hard to assess where you're going. And if you don't know where you are, it's also hard to assess where you're going. But another thing is that comes out of that program is that you also develop a worst case scenario. In other words, going back to the ship analogy, where, imagine that the ship and the crew are getting on the ship and they're trying to go somewhere, but they're trying to get away from something. They're trying to get away from, there's some kind of motivator. Maybe the captain doesn't want to get fired, or maybe the sailors are, escaping from prison, or maybe, they're going someplace because they've heard that there's wealth in new land, or there's goods over there that can be shipped somewhere else. There's something that they're going for. But in life, one of the things that motivates the people on that ship, and one of the things that motivates us in life, is the fear of the worst case scenario. In other words, for me, I keep going to work. I keep doing this work. I keep expanding my consciousness. I keep improving my abilities and my vocation, because I know that if I start to fail, I have people who rely on me for food and for shelter and for energy and for guidance and mentorship and comfort and all those other sorts of things. And if I don't maintain my vision, if I don't maintain the way that I'm going, if I don't maintain myself, if I don't have that, then the worst case scenario is that people I love dearly will suffer. Or if I don't maintain my discipline, then I'll slip back into alcoholism, or I'll slip back into smoking, or I'll slip back into self-destructive behaviors. So I have to know that those things are there, and I have to acknowledge them and say, yep, that's that's a part of Shawn's world. I can't deny it. Like, I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for a long time, but it's been a battle for me. And same thing with nicotine. I, haven't smoked in about a year, but it's been an on and off battle for a long time. But if I'm not aware of that, if I'm not conscious of it, and know that that's the demon that's biting at my heels, and that I have to keep moving forward, then the problem becomes then if I don't have a definite course, then I'm just moving forward and trying to get away from the demons that are biting at my heels, but I still don't know where I'm going. Does that make sense? So in the self-authoring program, it combines all those things where it's like, you have to know where you're coming from, you have to know where you are, and you have to know where you're going. Because if I'm just running away because something's biting at me, I'm still not going to get anywhere. I'm still going to run aground. And then when I run aground, those demons are going to catch up with me and get me. Right? That's the metaphor of the crocodile from Peter Pan, where, that crocodile is always after you. It's gotten a piece of you, and it's got a clock in it, and it's time that's ticking. And it's you running out of time, like this. There's like, for me, I'm 51, and I can see that no matter what happens, I have fewer wake ups ahead of me than I have behind me. And so, that's that clock that's gotten the alligator with the clock in it that's gotten hold of me. But the thing is like with Captain Hook, he was just focused on getting Peter Pan. He was just focused on getting wealth. He was just focused on getting all those other sorts of things. He wasn't focused on helping Peter grow. He wasn't focused on anything that was beneficial beyond himself. Right. And that's one of the things that made him a villain. Anyway, I probably unpacked that a little bit too much, but hopefully there's some good information in there for you to consider. So let's move on to the next slide. All right. So vision boards. I've had mixed results with vision boards. I know that some people like them. Some people use them. It is important to be specific, be imaginative, be creative, to take some time and think about the things that it is that you want in life. Because remember, life will give you, whatever it is that you ask of life, it'll give you. The answer is yes. But the next point is really important. And this I have found to be, when I'm doing vision boarding, when I'm doing journaling, to manifest, or my prayer process, then I have found that taking a month or so to think it through. Don't just take an afternoon. You sit down with your spouse or significant other and you say, okay, we're going to cut out a picture of a dog and a house and some money and a baby and a wedding ring. And we're going to cut those out and then make a board, right? You want to take some time and think about it and meditate on it and, take a Saturday and, put together your vision board and then, look at it for about a week or so and say, that's not quite what I want. Maybe let's tweak this. And, maybe I don't really want a horse, or maybe, I'd rather pursue enlightenment, or maybe I'd rather, teach people, or whatever the thing is. So for me, when I was younger, my vision board had a Master Sergeant insignia on there because I wanted to make Master Sergeant. That was my goal. And it was in the center above everything else. My goal was to make Master Sergeant above everything else. And one of the reasons why I caution you to take a month and update it a few times and change those things around is that, looking back, I wish that I had moved the position of that Master Sergeant stripe to somewhere else and made it subordinate to my relationship with God, or my relationship with my higher self, or my relationship with my family, or, my relationship with my children, right? Because I took that thing and I put it at the very top, and then that became the top goal for me. And then everything else kind of was secondary. My relationship with my children was secondary. My relationship with my father was secondary to everything else, because I put that at the top. So in my mind, when I envisioned it, it was at the top. Does that make sense? So take some time to do this and put things in the places. Think about where they are. Think about, the pyramid of priorities that you want, of, how you want your life to be, and be mindful about it and meditate on it and listen to your instincts and make those changes, right? And then once you've done that and you look at it and you maybe share it with somebody who you trust deeply, who will not be critical of you at all, or maybe just don't share it at all with anybody, then take that and do this next step. Leave it alone. Don't put it on the wall where you're going to see it every day. Don't put it on, it's best to just leave it alone. Stick it in the basement, and don't worry about it. And what I've found by doing it that way is it takes the pressure off, because it's like Joe Dispenza says, that the universe's love language is surprise. It wants to surprise you. It wants to give that joy of, something like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that happened. Or, when you go back years later and you pull out your vision board and you see, that the car that you put on there, and you think, oh man, I totally forgot that I put that car in there. But look, I have that car in the driveway right now. Or, for me, when my wife and I put together ours, we had a particular staircase we had pictures of the interior of a house. And there was a particular staircase that we just loved. We saw pictures of it and we put it on there. And our house right now has that same staircase that we put on our vision board, right? So those sorts of things, they pop up, but we didn't even think about the fact that staircase was on our vision board until we went back and revisited it. And we thought, oh man, that's amazing. Like those sorts of surprises that come up. Okay. So it's very, very important to take that and put that away. All right. Okay. This slide is where things get deep. So I want to give a trigger warning for those. The first word right there says Jesus. And I know a lot of people in the secular community, New Age community, the world of manifesting, all this other kind of stuff. There are some people who are atheists. There are some people who reject this kind of stuff. There are people who just have a really hard time with it. And for whatever reasons. And I understand that, because I went through a full spiritual journey where I completely walked away from the church, and I went down in atheism, and I got into New Age stuff, and I came back to different religions. And eventually I came full circle to understand that something that Aaron Abke talks about is that there's a difference between the things that Jesus taught in the scriptures and the things that the church teaches. And one of the reasons I had a falling out with the church in the first place is because I decided to just do away with all the other stuff, because people couldn't agree on, what's the right way to follow the Bible and what's the right version of Christianity. Because there's so many different, you get Presbyterians and Pentecostals and Catholics, and we have a charismatic Catholic church right down the road, and there's just so many denominations, and they all have their own ways of following these things. And I said, you know what? I don't care about any of that stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow the teachings of Jesus. And when you do that in the Christian church, you'll find that you get ostracized very quickly. And because there are things within Jesus' teachings that directly contradict things that Paul said. And to me, I'm going to go with what the Jesus guy said instead of what the Paul guy said. So anyway, that's going to cause some controversy. I get it, but it is what it is. This particular passage is from the Gospel of Thomas, which is not canonical, but I have found to be very powerful. And it's important that when you hear this passage I'm about to read, I believe that it is very important that you have to fully understand this. You have to have raised or been raised or experienced something so that your level of consciousness has reached a level where you can see the truth of this. Because if you've not gotten there yet, this passage could be damaging. So I ask that if you are not there, if you're not, according to the Dr. Hawkins scale of consciousness, if you're not at least in a place of courage or acceptance or some place higher on your level of consciousness, I ask that you maybe just skip this slide. Okay. But if not, hear me out and maybe you'll grow. And who knows? If you weren't supposed to hear this, you probably wouldn't be hearing it. So having said all that, I'm going to read you this passage and I'm going to talk to you about how this applies to manifestation in your life. And it's heavy. So let's go. So this is the Gospel of Thomas, saying number 22. Jesus saw babies nursing. He said to his disciples, "These nursing babies are like those who enter the Father's domain." Then they said to him, "Then shall we enter the Father's domain as babies?" Jesus said to them, "When you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, and when you make the male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male, nor the female be female, when you make eyes in place of an eye, a hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, an image in place of an image, then you will enter the Father's domain." Now, in today's political scene, I can see where some people would say, this is, confirmation of, Jesus supported, put a rainbow flag thing in there, or LGBTQ plus slogan in that sentence. And maybe, I don't know. But I don't think that is the point of this passage. Because as we talked about in my last presentation about the eighth Hermetic principle of, the principle of care, we talked about how that is a generative principle. And we talked about how that's the female, or the feminine energy rather, where it provides an encompassing area for things to go from the unreal to the real. Okay. And we talked about how masculine energy is penetrative and feminine energy is receptive. Okay. So when you think about that in this way, what this is saying is that when you align those two things, when you can in your mind, okay, think about this. So I think in Chinese philosophy or in Taoism, you have the yin and the yang, and the yin is the feminine and the yang is the masculine. But they interlock with each other. They're always moving for each other, and there's a little bit of yang in the yin and a little bit of yin in the yang, and they flow in and out of each other. They're always moving and flowing. When you understand that, when you can move from a mindset of dualistic thinking to non-dualistic thinking. In other words, like when we studied the Hermetic principles, we learned how everything has its poles, everything has its pair of opposites. But like heat is just a word that we use to describe something that we kind of experience here. But there's no point on a thermometer where anything goes from being cold to being hot, because it's all relative, right? So when you understand that idea of non-duality, and you understand that within any woman there are masculine tendencies, and with any man there are feminine tendencies, and it has some to do with their sexuality, but not as much as it has to do with their behaviors and propensities and things like that. Okay. Now, when you look at this and it talks about when you make the two into one, that's talking about taking the yin and the yang and seeing that they're the same thing. Or another way to think of it is when you take your head and your heart and you can align them. Greg Braden does a great job talking about this, is when you have the vision in your mind and you have the emotion in your heart, and when those two things are in line, that's when you're entering into the Father's domain. That's the kingdom of heaven, right? Because remember, elsewhere in the Gospel of Thomas, he's talking about the kingdom of heaven, and Jesus says a lot that the kingdom of heaven is within you. And he says, if someone says, "Behold, the kingdom of heaven is in the sky," he says, then the birds will get there first. Or, "Behold, the kingdom of heaven is in the sea," then the fish will get there first. But the truth is that the kingdom of heaven is within you. And when you are able to align these things and there's a specific emotion that we'll talk about in later presentations, but there's a specific emotion that comes when you've aligned the thought in your head with the emotion in your heart. When those are aligned, that's when you're moving into the Father's domain, or the kingdom of heaven, rather. So in here, but the rest of this passage talks about how clear you have to be. Okay. It says, when you make the outer and the inner, when you make the inner like the outer, when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower. Remember, this is like the principle of correspondence from Hermeticism, or the mirror principle, where the things that you see in the world are a reflection of who you are inside. It's a reflection of how you interpret yourself inside. So when you get those things to align, and then when you make the male and the female into a single one. Now, what he is talking about here also is the idea. Now, remember, Jesus was in Essene, which was a sect of the Jewish faith. They didn't call them Jews back then, but the Hebrew faith. And in the Essenes, they believed that ultimately we are spiritual beings having a human experience, rather than human beings having a spiritual experience. And to them, that meant that male and female, young and old, none of that kind of stuff mattered, because on the inside, that entity of light, that the light being that's within us, the higher being, you could say your higher consciousness, that doesn't have any gender, or it's not a man or a woman. It's not masculine, it's not male or female. And then, we've learned from people who have had out of body experiences, or better yet, near death experiences, where they get out of their body and suddenly all those sorts of things don't matter anymore. It's not, they aren't as attached to their role as a man or a woman anymore. They just see themselves as an entity. They see themselves as an entity of light. Some people have had experiences of moving back into the light and coming back again. Okay. So this was what this is talking about. There's a sense in which you, even for just a moment, if you can see yourself as that entity that's neither male nor female, that is neither, it's neither a man or a woman, but is just the I. Dr. Hawkins talks about in his book, The Eye of the Eye. It's that thing that sees through you. You identify with that part of you that sees out. That's when you start to enter the kingdom of heaven. Okay. And when you have this clarity of vision, so he says, when you make eyes in place of an eye, so it's plural instead of singular. So in other words, you take the image that's in your mind, we think of it in the pineal gland, and you bring that forward, so as if you can see it with your eyes. So you imagine it so clearly that you can see it with your eyes. And then a hand in place of a hand. So you imagine whatever it is that you're doing. Like you think of your hands, that's our vocation. That's our skill set. Part of what makes us a human is that it's the man is manifesting in manual, and it has to do with the fact that what we do as humans is we have these ideas in our mind that we get from spirit, we get from higher consciousness, we get from the unmanifest. And with our hands, with our dexterity, we make them so. We make cars, and we make roads, and we make problems, and we make traumas, and we make airplanes, and we take trees that are just growing naturally and we change them so that their apples are yummier. You see what I mean? We do all those things manually. So human has to do with our dexterity that we have. Okay. So when this says a hand in place of a hand, if whatever it is that you're doing with your hand, your vocation, if it's not what you want, then as you're taking the eye and making eyes out of an eye and a hand out of a hand, you're picturing, and very clear, your hand doing something else. So remember I talked about, I had a vision of becoming a master sergeant, and I wanted to be doing something else in my life. So I pictured myself doing that. And then a foot in place of a foot. It's the same thing. Your foot is where you're going. It's the steps that you're taking. It's the path that you're following. So you imagine that you have to bring it about with absolute clarity, that, and when you align your head and your heart, so your vision is absolutely clear of what you want your hand to be doing, where you want your feet to be going, and you see it as if it is in your eyes. You see it as if it's in your field of vision. Okay. And then that image, so an image in the place of an image. So we know too that through the work of Donald Hoffman and Tom Campbell and many other people, that what we see in the external world is a projection. It's an interpretation. And the things that we see in the world are the way that our brain has evolved to be able to survive and reproduce, so that we see certain colors and certain things and feel certain textures. But if it's not beneficial to us in some way, then it doesn't appear to our senses. So when you have an image in place of an image, then you're taking the image that's in your mind, the thing that's coming from your pineal, coming from your higher self, coming from that place, and you're bringing about so that you feel it in all of your body. You feel it, like you feel it in your bones, you feel it in your skin. You know exactly what it is that you want and the path that you want to take and what you want to be doing with your hands. And you like it's absolutely real. And then, like Neville Goddard says, you feel grateful for it. And then, like I said earlier, you forget about it. You take this moment, you say, yes, thank you that this is so. When Christians used to pray, I mean, they still pray, but they say amen, or they say let it be, or thus it is done. And they just assume that it's happened. And now I just have to wait for it to show up. But it's already there. It's already complete. Okay. This passage is how serious, how like deeply you have to feel that in your body, that let me read it one more time. When you make the eyes in place of an eye, a hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, an image in the place of an image, then you will enter the Father's domain. Then you'll enter the thing that Abraham Hicks calls the vortex. You're moving forward into the vortex, and that's the Father's domain. That's the place where the things that are untangible are trying to manifest through into the tangible. They're trying to push through. And then you're welcoming that in. You're moving into the Father's domain. All right. I think I talked about that quite a lot. All right. So next, the power of forgetting. I mentioned it just a second ago, but this is so important. I saved this point for last because it is absolutely 100% critical. Is that when you plant a seed, Dr. Wayne Dyer used to talk about this all the time, is that you cannot make a plant grow faster by pulling on it. You have to put the seed in the ground and forget about it. You have to just let it do its thing. You give it the right soil, you give it the right environment, you give it moisture, you give it all that kind of stuff, and a seed will just naturally do its thing. But the more you focus on it, the more you'll get discouraged, and the more you'll just be like, it's not going to happen. You just get frustrated. The difference is that with a seed, it's going to do its thing regardless of whether or not you get frustrated, right? But when you're trying to manifest, if you're trying to change your life, if you keep messing with it, if you keep fiddling around with it, then it's not going to grow. It's going to be harder and harder and harder. Think about the analogy of a cat. If you want to pet a cat, you have to embody a certain energy. A cat can sense if you're tense, if you're jumpy, if you're not quite safe, because cats are small and things like to eat them. But they're also deeply affectionate and deeply caring and warm, and they can be tender and they can be protective and they can be wonderful companions. But if you want to pet a cat or hold a cat and you chase it, you're not going to get it. You'll chase that cat to the end of the earth, and either the cat will die from exhaustion or you will, and you'll never get there. And so when you're thinking about that, you have to think about it this way. Again, we talked about the masculine and feminine. we talked about the masculine being the penetrative and the feminine being the receptive. And cats are considered, they're called felines. They're a feminine energy. You know, if you chase after it, it runs away. Just like, you know, if you want to find a wife, if you chase after her, she's going to run away. It's not going to happen. You have to be a certain way. You have to, you know, be in your masculinity. You have to be somebody who's approachable, who's safe, who can provide a safe place. And then that's when you attract a woman into your life, or, you know, a feminine, predominantly feminine energy person into your life, we'll say. Well, it's the same thing that when you are manifesting and you are doing that alignment, you are entering into the Father's realm. You're entering into the kingdom of heaven, which is that masculine energy, you see, and you're trying to move forward into the feminine. But if you're not doing it naturally, if you're not just being solid in yourself and just saying, no, I've accepted this as me. I've accepted this new identity as who I am. And you're chasing after it. Then that feminine, the feminine, the Gaia, the matter, the world of tangible things, the 10,000 things, like the Buddhists say, the world of the 10,000 things is going to keep fleeing away from you. It's going to just keep going. If you're chasing it and trying to get it, you will never get there. So the best thing is, that's why I talked about with the vision board, is you have to build that vision board, construct it, get clear, write it down, journal it, you know, write it and read it before you go to sleep at night, read it when you wake up in the morning, do that kind of stuff, and then put it away. All that process is planting the seeds, but then you have to leave it alone. Just say, it's done. Okay, it's done. However it comes to me is how it comes to me. Okay? Because whatever you intend is in the vortex. Remember, we talked about the vortex is the kingdom of heaven. It's the masculine energy that's now trying to manifest itself through. Okay? And then you have to practice radical allowing, which is, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know where things are going to come from. So you just have to allow it to happen. So this is how I got myself to the Jordan River, to the baptism site of Jesus, because I had used this technique where I had the vision in my mind, going to the baptism site where Jesus was, and I aligned the emotion in my heart, and I said, okay, I want to do this. But I wasn't good at it enough yet that I had done it intentionally. It was just something that after the event happened, I looked back and I said, that's the thing. That's what I did. But if I had planned this, if I had had it on my vision board and I had been trying to do it, then I would have planned to go to Israel. I would have planned to, because that's where Jesus was from, right? And if you go and look, you know, where do I go find the baptism site of Jesus? It'll say, well, I go to Israel, and then here's a tour, and you can sign up for that, and then it'll take you there, right? But the actual site, because the Jordan River has moved, the location of the site where he was actually baptized is now on the Jordanian side. And so when you go down to the river, because the river is not very wide, it's maybe 20, 30 feet wide, you can see on the other side there's a shrine and a little amphitheater set up where they give tours, and, you know, you have people talking to you and saying, over on the other side of the river is, in Jordan, is where Jesus was baptized. But for me, I didn't plan any of it. I got an assignment to a different unit, and it just happened one day that there was a trip coming up to Jordan, and the guy who was supposed to do it wasn't able to go, and I was the only other person who was qualified. And my commander came to me and said, hey, Shawn, you're going on this trip now. And so I went, and then we finished our assignment, did what we had to do, and then we had a few days to kill. And where we were staying, waiting for our flight back home, my commander came to me and said, hey, Shawn, the baptism site of Jesus is right down the road. It's like 20 minutes away. Would you like to go see it? I said, 100%. Let's go do this. And as I was walking down the path to it and realizing that this was the actual site and seeing where the shrines had been and seeing the historical significance of that, I just started weeping, because I realized that this was now coming to fruition. This was something that I had wished for, but not sought after. Does that make sense? And that's the radical allowing. I was doing the radical allowing without even knowing that I was doing the radical allowing. And that's how you have to approach it. You have to be that extreme about it. You have to just set the intention and say, okay, literally forget about it. And then practice radical allowing by just not doing anything. Now, this is very different from, if you have a savings goal, or if you have a fitness goal, or if you have, some kind of health goal, or if you have an education goal, then you can pursue those goals. Those are great. Do those goals 100%. But as you're going through those fitness goals, you'll have to realize that you're going to hit a wall and you can't get past it. As you're reaching for those education or financial goals, you're going to hit a wall and you won't be able to get past it. And you can do all those things. You can achieve those little milestones on your own. But when it starts to get difficult, like for me, when it was time to make Master Sergeant, there were things that had to happen that I had no control over. I had no control over my assignments. I had no control over all those little things that I wanted to do. So I had to allow all that. I had to do the work that was in front of me. Like it says in the Bible, that whatever work you find for yourself to do unto the glory of God. And however you picture that, however you, like, it's your higher self, or whether it's the greater humanity, or it doesn't matter how you picture that, but you have to be doing it towards your higher vision. And then for me, remember I said, like, in my vision board, I put that Master Sergeant at the very top. I ended up worshiping making Master Sergeant above everything else. And so because I worshiped that, I sacrificed way more than I needed to. Okay. So I think that's enough of that. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and we'll go from there. All right. So let's go back to the workbook. And if you don't have a copy of this workbook, you can go over to school.com, SKOOL.com, /Finding Fuscata. And there is a copy of it in there. Right now, I'm running a special because we're still kind of fledgling. We're growing. I'm building out this coaching program, and I would love to have smart, well-intentioned, highly experienced, or brandy new folks contributing to this. I think it's going to be a really good program when it's done. But right now, I'm opening up membership to my school program for just $1 a month until we have the first 100 members. And after that, the investment to get in will go up. So get yourself in there, get in the door. If you have some good intentions, come and join us while we're building this program out, and you'll get access to these slides, obviously, which are on YouTube, but they're also in school. I also have podcasts that are going to be available, and the full-length podcasts will be available in there. And there's going to be some great stuff. Plus, there's some amazing people. It's a great community. There's a great learning. It's a great place to grow and share and learn. And right now, you can get in for $1 a month, and it's an absolute wonderful deal. And you can grow with us. Get in on the ground floor, as they say. Anyway, so here's back to the workbook. Here's the summary of what we talked about. I know it's different from the slides, but these are the core elements that I want you to get in the workbook. So the first thing is that there's no right or wrong way to visualize. We talked about vision boards. We talked about journaling. We talked about, some people see things. Some people have vivid colors. Some are black and white. Some think in emotions, or they think in smells, or they think in like all these other sorts of ways. That's fine. Whatever works for you is what works for you. Just own that and do it. And number 2 is, when you visualize, remember to include as much sensory information as possible. I think I really hammered that one home. If that didn't get hammered home to you yet, then I don't know what else anybody can tell you, because that's as real as it gets, boys and girls. And then number 3 is that in manifesting, avoid strategizing and practice allowing. Okay. So and remember we talked about, there's a difference between setting goals for yourself and then relying on your manifestation practices to help you overcome obstacles or to take care of the unseen things that'll bring things together for you. Okay. So last slide is doing the internal work. And in the workbook, you can write out your answers. And then also, if you'd like to share, go into the community in school.com and you can write your answers in there, have some great discussions going. So what visualization techniques have you used in the past? What were the results? And what might you use going forward? For me, I'm still practicing radical allowing and radical submission in my life. That's something I've struggled with because I have a very strong ego. So I'm always working on that. But I think I went over a lot of my answers for this. Now, this other one, this is a tough question. If you haven't watched the other video, you may not understand how this works together, but how can you apply the principle of care in your visualization practice? And the answer to this is that the thing with the principle of care is that it's there's that phrase that says, where attention goes, energy flows. And I don't like that saying because I can pay attention to my phone but no energy is going to flow to it. It's not until I put concerted energy and care about it and what's the word? When I apply the principle of care, then energy flows. So I can just have the phone, I can pay attention to it and it's fine. But if I start talking about the phone and taking care of the phone and then make YouTube videos to review the phone and tell people that I can repair their phones and do all that kind of stuff, then eventually I'll get more subscribers and people will send me their phones to repair, or they'll send me free sample phones to review. And, things will start to manifest and things will start to grow because that's when I'm applying the principle of care to my visualization practice. Make sense? So, and this may feel like a contradiction, but you have to that's where you have to take that idea of non-duality, because you have to visualize the thing that is that you want. And like I'm doing with this YouTube channel with Finding Fuscata, I am just trusting that whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I'm not chasing after the results. I'm not trying to make it grow any faster. I don't care if it grows or not. It's not up to me. My job is to just enjoy the process, to say, I love this. I'm putting my energy into this. I'm putting my attention into this. I'm putting my care into this, into just doing this. And I did the visualization work. Like I have an idea of where it would like to go, but I don't get a say in that really. And along the way, I'm anticipating I'll get little surprises and I'll get little hints and clues. Like I interviewed somebody for the podcast just yesterday, and that was an answer to prayer. And it told me that I need to take things in a slightly different direction. Okay. So that's for me, that's how I apply the principle of care into my visualization practice. So I know it's a complicated answer, but this can be complicated stuff. And if you don't dive deep and to understand this, then it can be really easy to get discouraged in your manifestation journey and to think that maybe it's just not for you and it's not working for you, or you go keep chasing after other coaches and other programs and you'll never ever get there, right? But if you learn this stuff and you dig deep and you find out what it really means and you find out how it really works, your life will change. And that's why this program, this craft of manifestation program, is meant to be life-changing. It's meant to change the trajectory of your life. So, and that's it. Thank you for your time. I would love to hear your comments, questions, answers, problems, and please keep everything polite. If you're rude, I'll block you. I love challenging questions and push back on me because I'm not 100% expert on this. So if you see something different, or if I can explain something better, or if you have a better perspective, 100% add that. And even better, if you can go to school.com, that's skool.com/Finding Fuscata, and contribute it in there into the conversation. That'd be even better. So, and that's it. I will not see you later. You'll see me. Thanks. Bye-bye.